Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News. Good to see everyone. I'm early. Ha ha. I don't know why. I did that. I didn't really look at the time. I was about to press the button and I pressed the button and I was like, oh, I don't know what time it is. What time is it? It's early. But that gives us like 2 minutes to talk, and that's it. Anyways, early chatters are in. Greetings, guys. Welcome. Rockfin, we have Urban Hermit. Urban Hermit is here for the early start. What's going on, Herbie? Please come join me on Rockfin, ROKFIN.com. And I guess I'll have to make this announcement later. We're gonna do a Rockfin only stream tomorrow. Surprise! I will talk about this again because not everybody's here. But don't worry, if you're on YouTube, I'm gonna upload it after the stream. Everything will be fine. But greetings, Raza, Rich Diana, Nasbanabs, Andy the Gardener. Says Christianity has quite a few plot holes. Max Sarge. Yeah, I'm usually a couple minutes late, so today I just decided to be a couple minutes early, I guess, It's like a relative start. Hunter Z, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., YouTube Democracy Now! Has his awesome speeches, indeed. Now it's 11. Now we're on time. Hello. Hello. People of Rockfin. Hello, people of Rockfin. Osama. Kevin Shanholzer for the Biosphere. Greetings. Let's see how many people we can get on Rockfin today. Let's try and get 20. Come on. Don't let me down. But yes, happy MLK Day. Happy MLK Day. And we all know Martin Luther King is a hero and freedom fighter. He was also a socialist and a decrier of the scourge of capitalism and the military-industrial complex. Could be why the establishment was so upset about him. Maybe not as upset as they were about Malcolm X, but both of them caused the establishment to shake in their boots. Ooh. Anyways, beware, be vigilant, don't let them divide us. Don't let them stop you from understanding and loving those who are not like you. Don't let them bear false witness against you or anyone else in their ends to set us against each other. And the thing I really like to point out about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King is that Malcolm X was more radical. Martin Luther King was, I guess more mainstream on some. I mean, he was still seen as an incredible threat to the powers that be, right? They did, all kinds of things to stop him and to thwart him in his efforts and to undermine him and to discredit him, right? They did all that stuff. But Malcolm X was even, was more radical. but towards the end of both of their lives, they were moving towards each other, right? Malcolm X was becoming more open and understanding that that there were white allies, there were other people that were not, that he could embrace a multiculturalism, if you will, depending on which side of the establishment you're on. And Martin Luther King was getting more radical. He was calling out systemic poverty, systemic injustice, systemic militarism, etc. So, always good things to remember. I heard MLK was a Republican. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he had did he have a party? I don't know. I know that Malcolm X wasn't, on either side of either party. I know that. Not really sure where MLK stood on that. Scott Andrews, Patriot Act 2, indeed. Indeed. Right, realize exactly. FBI sent MLK a letter trying to blackmail him into committing suicide. Oh, yeah. They did all that. Osama says Congressional Military Industrial Media Complex. Or CMIM. Or CMIM. Or CMIMC. Is it CMIMC? How about that? Does that roll off the tongue? Rich Gianna says, hopefully Take a Dump is the last bastion of racism and diversity will take its rightful place. I mean, I would call that hopium on some level, Rich Gianna, even though, I agree with the sentiment. But racism is not going to end with Trump. It didn't start with Trump. Certainly. It didn't end with Trump. And, the diversity of the ruling class doesn't necessarily help the diversity of those who are ruled. And so, don't get fooled again, right? Meet the same boss or new boss, same as the old boss. Don't get fooled again. But I concur with your intentions, Rich Diana, totally. Totally. But just because we have a diverse cabinet under Biden doesn't mean that they're not going to try and do horrible things in the name of diversity, right? So a lot of people aren't buying it. A lot of people aren't buying it. And if you look at all the shitty things that Kamala Harris did while she was Attorney General of California, she did some horrible things to her black constituents. She did some horrible things in her power, with her power. So, her diversity is tokenism at best. It's what you stand for. Yes, Guao Mashi, Biden's cabinet is not diverse, it is merely multicolored. Well, it's not diversity of ideology, right? That's the thing, is that how many progressives are in his cabinet? Kamala Harris is not a progressive, I'm sorry. If you believe that, right. 0 progressives in his cabinet. So there's no diversity of ideology, there's no diversity of thought. They're all in league and in the employ of the powers that be, the ruling class, the oligarchs, they all are doing their bidding just because there are, the Secretary of Defense was on the board of Raytheon, first black man named to be Secretary of Defense. However, he was on the board of Raytheon, and he needs a waiver to be appointed because you're supposed to be out of service for like 10 years, right? Before you have to be a civilian. You have to be out of service for 10 years. He's only been out of service for 4 years, was on the board of Raytheon, so, when people cheer that on, they don't even really understand what they're cheering on. That's what I'm trying to get at. Right. We got 10 watching on Rockfin, Snake 1974, Guaumashi included. Come hang out with us on Rockfin. What's going on? All right. Yeah, Sandy, that's a good point. I am trying to wait and see what happens in the first 100 days before I critique. My focus, EPA, Interior, and Energy. And there's a lot of talk about Bernie Sanders being head of the Finance Committee in the Senate, or Budget Committee. That might mean good things. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, we'll have to wait and see what that means. We'll have to wait and see what the Biden team really... Yeah, Osama, Victoria Nuland. Yeah. And there are others who are very problematic. What was I just reading the other day? The woman that they are putting in charge of U.S. aid, Samantha Power. Anyways, so yeah, let's get into the story. And again, well, before we do that, now we'll do this and we'll come back. So the story is, this is from CBC News, Canada. Biden indicates plans to cancel Keystone XL pipeline permit on first day in office, sources confirm. Rescind Keystone XL pipeline permit appears on transition briefing note. List of executive actions. So what does that mean? It's actually going to happen? It's on a briefing note, but we'll, look, this would be a good thing if he did that. That would be helpful. It would be great. Again, as Sandy said, a wait and see attitude is what I'm waiting for. Anyways, let's read on. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden has indicated plans to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline permit via executive action on his first day in office. Sources confirmed to CBC News on Sunday. A purported briefing note from the Biden transition team mentioned the plan was widely circulated over the weekend after being shared by the incoming president's team with U.S. stakeholders. The list shown to stakeholders is a lengthier version of a list already reported in the media based on a memo released publicly over the weekend by Biden's chief of staff, Ronald Klain. That publicly reported memo from Klain did not mention Keystone XL, but cautioned that the memo was not a complete list of planned actions. So, all right, so, here's kind of the weird, this is what we see. And again, the wait and see is the way to go, Sandy, because this is what we have been seeing with the Biden team all along, is that, right, they had this big, Green New Deal kind of thing in their plan, and climate was going to be front and center of their administration. And then they quietly took out the thing about, the part about ending subsidies to fossil fuel companies, so they took that out. Then later in the campaign, when some people called them out, they were like, we're absolutely not going to end fracking anytime soon. So there's that. They waffled all the way into the White House, and now, now they're like, So the big headline, right? The headline is Biden's going to cancel. It's big on Twitter. Oh, he's going to cancel the Keystone XL. Yay! Everybody, yay for Biden. Okay, it's great if he does that. It's great. But they're, couple paragraphs into the story, they're like, well, I don't know. Is it on the list? I'm not sure. He cautioned that the memo was not a complete list of planned actions. Okay, it's just a memo. Just caution. We'll see. Climate actions planned for first day. They include a raft of environmental policies to be enacted on the first day of his presidency, including rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. The note shown to stakeholders has led some to expect that the first day climate actions will include the move to cancel the project to carry Canadian bitumen. Okay, now listen to this. This is the other part that's a little bit funny. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, in his first conversation with Biden as president-elect in November, indicated that he wanted to speak further about some potential irritants. Joe, this is Justin. I just want to have a little conversation with you about some irritants. And one of those is including the Keystone XL and Biden's proposed Buy American policy. So, wow, Biden proposed some Buy American policies. Does that kind of sound like Trump's trade war type things? Trump just used, the wrong language as in trade war. Or we're going to do some trade that benefits America. Biden's proposed Buy American policies. Well, that sounds really nice. Just Buy American. That sounds pretty good. But it might be an irritant to Canada or some other countries, right? Anyways, Biden foreshadowed such cancellation months ago, announcing in a U.S. TV interview and through statements from his campaign team that he intended to cancel the $8 billion cross-border pipeline. However, proponents of the project have been hoping that he might reconsider once in office. Ambassador says Canada continues to support the project. So there is some pressure from Canada and I'm sure other people, some business people, that, hey, Joe, maybe you should let's keep this Keystone pipeline going. Let's keep it going. TC Energy said in a release late Sunday that the company plans to spend $1.7 billion on a solar, wind, and battery-powered operating system for the pipeline. Well, we're gonna green up the pipeline, guys. Is that okay? Is that good? And hire a union-only workforce. Okay. Oh. Guys, we're going to union up the pipeline, sign indigenous equity partners, and establish zero emissions operations by 2030, all with an eye towards securing Biden's approval. Well, that sounds really nice. However, what is the pipeline carrying? This all sounds like a bunch of bullshit. This whole thing is a bunch of bullshit. This whole thing is a bunch of bullshit. This whole sentence. Or a paragraph, whatever you want to call it. They're trying to get Biden's approval by making the pipeline that carries oil zero emissions, which means it's carrying, anyways, whatever. I don't know, guys. Mixed bag on that one. What do you think? What do you think? Is he going to do it? Do you think he's going to do it? You want to take bets now? Should we place bets now? Human Love Solidarity says, let's start the complaining. I don't know. That article, the headline was so like, yes. And the article was like, well, I don't know. Basically. If you want the cliff notes from the article, it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to do this or not. We're trying to green up the pipeline so Biden won't cancel it. Duncan McCown says Trudeau is a hypocrite of the First Order. Well, yes. Wants his pipeline. And to be Greta's best friend, greenwasher in chief, indeed. Pipelines of love, says Jin Pi Gamma. Right. Yeah. Poppy Davis says nope. That's your vote. I say probably nope. But yeah, Roscommon, Biden will blow a bunch of hot air. It's not looking. That article doesn't really make it look very likely now, does it? Kevin Shandholzer on Rockfin says today's R's and D's bear little resemblance to the old ones. They're different parties now. They're almost the same party, or kinda. They're moving in different directions. They look very different. Scott Andrews says I predict more kabuki theater. Raza, thank you for the super chat. He says made in America. Okay. Thanks, Raza. Yeah. Interglacial Optimist says, I've only been part of the environmental movement since the late 1970s, so I firmly believe this election will make a difference. And I believe you're being a little sarcastic there. Do I sense a little sarcasm? Yeah, and, definitely can't green up the military without a lot of oil. You know what I'm saying? Need lots of oil to green up the military. Anyways, let's get an update on global temperatures from Ed Hawkins. Global temperature variations over the last 2,000 years. Oh, the climate is always changing. Ow. The climate is always, yeah. You know when the climate is always, oh. Yeah. The climate is always, what? The climate is always what? The climate is always, yeah. Yeah. Climate is always changing except for when it isn't. Except for when human beings drive it off a cliff. That's when the climate is not always changing. Yes. Oh, I wanted to show you all some more slides. Nope, that's not it. Oop. Sorry about that. Thought this was a good one. I know everybody's concerned about coronavirus, but could this be the intention of everything that's going on here? Remain terrified, question nothing, stay home. I want to read this comment from Sultan Bev. This is from a few days ago. In regard to a paper I was reading about the progress of climate change. He said, I downloaded the paper referenced by The Guardian. It has some fine quotes, which The Guardian notably left out. As of 2020, the overall material output of human endeavor exceeds the sum of all living biomass on Earth. Climate is always changing until the humans change the climate. That's when that happens. When the overall material output of human endeavor exceeds the sum of all living biomass on Earth. Also, that we are already on the path of the sixth major extinction is now scientifically undeniable, and it's been fact for quite a while. already in. Already, we're not looking at it. We're not almost there. We're not going to avoid it by going green. We are in the sixth major extinction. Regarding international climate change accords, intended national determined contributions for post-2020 climate action have been utterly inadequate. He said, this is my favorite. The predominant paradigm is still one of pegging environment against economy. Yet in reality, the choice is between exiting overshoot by design or disaster, because exiting overshoot is inevitable. One way or another. And one more, even though climate change alone will incur a vast economic burden, possibly leading to war, nuclear or otherwise, at a global scale, most of the world's economies are predicated, on the political idea that meaningful counteraction now is too costly to be politically palatable. Not economically feasible. Combined with financed disinformation campaigns in a bid to protect short-term profits, it is doubtful that any needed shift in economic investments of sufficient scale will be made in time. Thank you, Sultan Bev, for bringing those quotes. There's more. But wait, there's more. This from Nicholas Humphrey. Intense drought continues to persist over most of the western U.S. and much of the Great Plains. This is from a few days ago. Drought is expected to continue across this region and possibly develop more over the southern plains and deep south over the remainder of the meteorological winter. Drought conditions may improve over the winter with more rain and snow over Oregon whenever we happen to get that. So yeah, exceptional drought. Lots of places of exceptional drought, extreme drought, severe drought, and then abnormally dry. Abnormally dry. Let's move on. I think that's it. For the slides. Wow. Sandy says Jordan's status coup coverage of the Second Amendment nut rally in Virginia got taken down for violating Sorry, I just heard something weird. Got taken down for violating YT's firearms policy. I was watching it. How ridiculous it's news. Hold on one second, guys. I got to take a break for a sec. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. My apologies. Let's move on. Oh, good tweet from Jem Bendel. Replying to, I think, Michael Mann was referring to Extinction Rebellion as performative attention whores. Or laughing at the fact that he thinks he wasn't referring to them as performative attention whores. Somebody else was saying they're clearly performative attention whores who were saved from a life in prison for terrorism by their inability to even get the drone off the ground. I think he was talking about when Extinction Rebellion was planning to fly drones near Heathrow. They poke man in an attempt to gain publicity. Nothing they are doing in any way helps combat anthropogenic climate change. Are you sure about that? Anyways, Jem Bendel retweets, says, "Dear scientists, please stick to applying for grants, writing papers, going to summits, dreaming of carbon unicorns, ignoring past warnings, selling books, pretending to know about psychology, sociology, and activism, playing victim, and never getting radical." Boom bap bip. Nice tweet from Jem Bendel. You know, and I have to say, you know, we rely on scientists to tell us the truth, but when they don't tell us the truth, it can be really, really frustrating and lead to a lot of misunderstanding of what is really going on. And lead to a lot of anger when people feel like they're being bullshitted. Especially in the case of Michael Mann. So, you know, again, I'm going to say I think that scientists should stop doing the studies because we all know what's happening, and join forces with activists or community groups or people who are trying to spread the message. Or you know, just aim all of their research dollars at figuring out how it is we're going to change, human, the human idea around climate change and possibly move into a better place, move human beings into a better place, or move human beings into a place where they can live in harmony with nature, right? We need lots more studies on that. And we need more cooperation with activists and people who are really concerned, people who are out on the front lines, and people who might be a little bit out there, right? So, you know, the people who are like ringing the alarm bell, who are shouting fire in a theater that's on fire, you know, they need to do a lot more in conjunction with those people and not dismiss them or call them wacky or call them nuts or block them on Twitter or how dare you. But yes, you know, climate scientists have been ringing the alarm on some level for years, but they clearly didn't do a very good job in really, really sounding the alarm. You know, it's going to take regular people and communicators and people who are in other fields to get out there and like really spread the message. And those people are, you know, are going to be from all walks of life. They're not all going to be scientists. So Osama says Guy and Pauline's discussion with Peter Miller yesterday was excellent. Cool. Human behavior is underlying all of this, says Sandy. Yes. We actually need a lot more psychology, sociology, and even history. Spirituality. I mean, there has to be so many other practices involved in this. Anyways. Century of the Self is alive and well, says Basil. Yes. Let's keep going. Rupert Murdoch is just a terrible, terrible human being. We all know that. In Australia, Murdoch propaganda in support of huge new fossil gas plant with zero mention of emissions or anthropogenic climate change. Obviously, Murdoch owns Fox News in the U.S. and is, that served to just completely scramble the brains of a lot of people in the country. Anyways, moving on. Outcry as Trump officials to transfer sacred Native American land to minors. This is from 2 days ago. Critics condemn callous betrayal after Trump officials set in motion transfer of Oak Flat to Rio Tinto and BHP Billiton. As one of his last acts, the Trump administration has set in motion the transfer of sacred Native American lands to a pair of Anglo-Australian mining conglomerates. The 2,422-acre Arizona parcel called Oak Flat is of enormous significance to the Western Apache and is now on track for destruction by what is slated to be one of the largest copper mining operations in the United States. Native Americans in the area have compared it to the historical attacks on their tribes. What was once gunpowder and disease is now replaced with bureaucratic negligence. Native people are treated as something invisible or gone. We are not. We don't want to be pushed around anymore. The move comes after the administration sped up the environmental approval process for the transfer by a full year. Last May, Rio Tinto blasted a sacred Aboriginal site in Western Australia's Yukon Gorge. The widespread public outcry led the Rio Tinto chairman, Simon Thompson, to promise that the company would never again destroy sites of exceptional archaeological or cultural significance until next year. Called the Chichil Bildigotil in Apache, Oak Flat is listed on the National Register of Historic Places for its spiritual and cultural significance. Yet, thousands of feet beneath Oak Flat is a copper deposit, estimated to be one of the largest in the world and worth more than $1 billion. Well, we got to go get that copper. Got to get that copper, boys. The Arizona Representative Raul Grijalva and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders also plan to introduce the Save Oak Flat Act in Congress to repeal the land exchange. There have been lawsuits filed, of course. Let's hope this doesn't continue under Biden. We will see. Someone else alerted me to this story. I'm not going to read too far into this, but the biosecurity myth that is destroying small farming. And basically, this is a story about viruses or flu, swine flu, and other diseases that attack farm animals. Basically, they have all these regulations that are supposed to ensure that farmers are not making themselves more susceptible to these diseases and or spreading these diseases. But the thing is that the regulations end up impacting small businesses much more than large businesses, forcing small farmers out of business. And small farmers don't necessarily need to be small businesses don't necessarily need to be affected by these regulations, because the smaller farmers, tend to have their flocks or their herds or whatever it is that they're raising spread out more, smaller in numbers, so they're not as susceptible to getting the swine flu or these other diseases that affect farm animals. So the diseases that are not necessarily prevalent in the small farms end up going out of business because they can't afford to comply with these regulations, which are cost prohibitive. Got it? And then these small farms go out of business, and then Bill Gates and people like that buy up the small farms, right? See how that works? A big old bad virus comes along and forces a lot of small businesses out of business, and then the big businesses take over and buy up all the... Virus comes along and forces a lot of people out of their homes because they can't afford to pay rent anymore, and then the investment companies come and snatch up the homes. Yes, OBS. Sandy, I'm using OBS. OBS. Yeah, I saw that. Kevin Shanholzer Capital is on lockdown due to fire several blocks away. But what's up, guys? Just saying hi to my people on Rockfin. $11 people watching on Rockfin. Let's get some more people on Rockfin if we can. Moving on to just a few more things before I go. I found this a little bit disturbing, this story. People are turning in loved ones for the Capitol attack. I mean, I don't know. This is just, the language in this is just really disturbing. Okay, if you did some violence, that's fine, but like people are turning in people that were just there. Anybody there who was at the Capitol protesting, they're all insurrectionists. Again, what went on there was, there was a whole bunch of things that went on there at the Capitol, but they're trying to really just make it cut and dry that, Trump incited a riot and all these people there were just taking part in an insurrection, and that's it. That's all it was. So people are turning in. This is just weird to me, because this sounds like language that would be used, right? If the fascists want you to turn in your loved ones for, because they were protesting against the government. Which side sounds like the fascists is what I want to know. So this woman says she found out about her in-laws' participation when the woman in question called her aunt from inside the Capitol to brag about taking back the election. Lopez, who was 42, said she had known the relative her whole life but had no qualms about reporting her. If I saw my grandmother making bombs in her basement or my aunt breaking into a home, I would have to intervene as well. Yeah, but that's... breaking into a home is different from going to a protest, or making a bomb in your basement is way different from going to a protest. More than 140,000 people have sent tips to the FBI reporting participants in the riots on the Capitol on the 6th of January. My question is, what if this was Black Lives Matter? Or Antifa or whatever? What if this was a left-wing, protest at the Capitol and they were like, no, F Trump. And the FBI was, rounding up people at that riot or at that protest for, doing some riots. Would you have the same feelings as what I'm asking? That's my question. Would you have the same feelings? Would you feel like that was really wrong? Super fascist? Again, a lot of these people were there just protesting. Not everybody there was like, let's take them, not everybody there was like intent on insurrection or on, there were a lot of people there that were peacefully protesting. A lot of people were saying, don't break into the Capitol. Don't do the breaking the windows thing. Don't go in there. Don't do violence. A lot of people were saying that. Other people who were reporting on what was going on there. Just kind of wild. That's all. And then this language is really weird because the inauguration is going to be virtual, right? There's not going to be a public crowd at the inauguration. So it's a really weird thing that they're like, we're expecting a lot of violence. Thousands of troops dig in they're digging in. They're digging in this war. But nobody's going to be there. That's the crazy thing. They're playing a leading role as a country confronts domestic terrorism. I'm just trying to point out the fact that the language that's being used is meant to ramp you up emotionally. Please, somebody, please pass the Patriot Act 2.0, please, as quickly as you can, because we need to be safe from this domestic terror, please. The Capitol is now crawling with more troops than in the United States' main theaters of war in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria combined, as the National Guard fortifies key areas around Washington, D.C. for President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration that will have no public crowd. The Secret Service is even referring to the new perimeter around the Capitol as the Green Zone. Wow, the same name used for secure zones in Iraq and wow, so it's a war zone, guys. And the war is against who? I mean, they're really like going all out to make sure that you are just as frightened as possible. Remain terrified, question nothing, stay at home. Are you terrified yet? Are you just shaking? Oh my God, are you ready? Anyways, wild. And lastly, I'm going to read this article from Caitlin Johnson. I really like Caitlin Johnson. She writes, what, quote unquote, democracy is under attack? Notes from the edge of the narrative matrix. To stop the exacerbation of Trumpism, the talking heads are recommending internet censorship, regulations on media, new domestic terror laws, literally anything they can possibly think of, except changing the conditions which gave rise to Trumpism. I was just watching a really good documentary on Netflix about the crack epidemic. And the fact that the crack epidemic was basically fostered by, the Iran-Contra thing, the flooding of drugs into American markets and lower income neighborhoods by the CIA and other organizations. And then when it first was starting, the cops just let it happen. They weren't arresting people. They weren't taking people down. They were just letting it happen. letting people get hooked, letting, gangs could just go, whatever, just do whatever they want. And then the response was to criminalize the people who were using and the people who were selling, right? But they didn't actually look into, like, why did this happen? It took a long time for people to realize, there were underlying factors in this whole thing that started this whole. But, for a long time, the language was just say no to drugs, and then they passed the crime bill, the 1994 crime bill, and the 3 strikes laws, and they were just going to just come down hard on these criminals and these addicts, right? The most imminent threat to U.S. democracy is not Russia nor fascist insurrectionists, but the fact that the U.S. democracy is entirely fictional. Saying U.S. democracy is being threatened is like saying Grinches are a critically endangered species. The previous president intervened in the primary to appoint his right-hand man as his chosen successor. That successor will be installed in a 5-day star-studded celebration surrounded by a sea of barbed wire and heavily armed soldiers. What democracy is under attack? Exactly. No, the Capitol riot was not karma for America's international coups and regime change interventions. Karma would be the U.S. actually reaping what it sows. Karma would be the U.S. government toppled and replaced with a foreign puppet regime and millions of Americans killed. Karma would be tens of millions of Americans displaced by widespread violence. Karma would be the U.S. becoming a failed state where people are again sold as slaves. Karma would be nuclear bombs dropped on U.S. cities. Karma would be Americans starved to death by crushing sanctions. Karma would be America's forests soaked with Agent Orange. Karma would be mass executions of Americans in sports stadiums. Karma would be massacres of entire towns, men, women, and children. Karma would be foreign soldiers raping and killing civilians with impunity. Karma would be foreign-backed extremists mutilating Americans to death and publicly displaying their corpses. Karma for U.S. interventionism would be for America to collapse and burn in chaos and torture. That would be karma. That would be the chickens coming home to roost. I am not saying it would be a good thing if this happened. It most definitely would not. I am saying the U.S. must cease brutalizing the world. We know for a fact that monopolistic Silicon Valley megacorporations can be pressured by the plutocrat-controlled politics media class to silence political factions online. Good thing there's no way this can possibly go wrong. When you realize that corporations are America's real government, it isn't censorship if it's a private company doing it argument is seen for the joke that it is. I'm going to read that again. When you realize that corporations are America's real government, it isn't censorship if it's a private company doing it argument is seen for the joke that it is. It's also completely specious because the government is directly involved in the censorship. Again, why would Twitter knew that dumping Trump off their platform would hurt their bottom line, and it did. They did it anyways. Soon social media will just be an app that sends everything you say to the FBI and gives you regular notifications that the government is your friend, and then everyone will finally be happy. That newsflash, that's already happening. Back before he was silenced, Assange tweeted, "The overwhelming majority of information is classified to protect political security, not national security." I think of this quote often. The mass media have earned every bit of contempt the public has for them, every little bit of it. Rightists suck at conspiracy analysis because their worldview requires an elite cabal planning and orchestrating all evil dynamics, whereas leftists understand that many, though not all, of those dynamics will unfold on their own in a system where human behavior is driven by profit-seeking. In situations where you are ideologically prohibited from blaming the obvious culprit, capitalism, you'll come up with all kinds of other wacky explanations. The best, most reliable way to accurately predict what will happen in a given situation is to ignore whatever laws, trends, and dynamics everyone else is pointing at, and just assume that the most powerful people will find a way to get whatever it is they want somehow. Doesn't mean elites always win, and it certainly doesn't mean we should stop fighting. It's just the most reliable way to accurately guess what will happen in a given situation if you're into that sort of thing. Sectarian feuds in the online left always boil down to the whole system is rigged against the people, lefties, versus we can work with the oligarchic empire to advance our interests, lefties. The U.S. empire has two faces, the plastic smiling one based in Hollywood and the blood-splattered one based in D.C., Arlington, and Langley. If you live in wealthy Western nations, you're presented with the former. If you live in the Middle East or the global South, you get the latter. One of the weirdest things in my life these days is watching people enthusiastically arguing that you should receive less assistance from their government. Never until I began commenting on U.S. politics was this ever a part of my life. The brainwashing there is out of this world. If a political party always succeeds at advancing sick agendas and always fails at advancing healthy agendas, it's because it only exists to advance sick agendas. Victory for your revolutionary political goals won't be a victory for the ego. If you are sincere about this, you want your marginalized viewpoint to become mainstream and mundane. You want your insight and understanding to become as common as grass. You can't be in this for you. A lot of revolutionary-minded types get a sense of coolness and specialness from their marginalized ideology. It makes them feel good to be uniquely right about things. But that attitude will actually get in the way if your goals are attained and your views become mainstream. If you are sincere about this stuff and not just in it for egoic masturbation, many are, you can't keep a lot of identity wrapped up in being the underdog, in being fringe and marginalized, because the ultimate goal is to be the exact opposite. Always good stuff from Caitlin Johnson. Hope you all enjoyed that. Realize the marriage between government and corporations equal the evil empire of fascism, indeed. Anyways, guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Hello to my friends on Rockfin, Jay Thadcast, Kevin Shanholzer, Osama, Poppy, Guaumashi, Snake 1974, For the Biosphere. And everyone watching on the YouTubes, thank you for hanging out with me every single day. Grateful Dan at the usual time, 11 a.m. So guys, tomorrow I'm going to do a Rockfin only live stream at 11 a.m. So please come join me on Rockfin. If you cannot get on Rockfin, I will upload the live stream after the show. But it's just one day. Don't worry about it. Just one day. Just tomorrow. So tomorrow I will see you at 11 a.m. on Rockfin. Alrighty? Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Until next time, peace.